Good afternoon, good day, whatever time you're watching it. Hi Priyanka, welcome.
Hello, ma'am. Thank you so much.
So today we're going to be looking at teams, and also one of the important points in teams is handling conflict, right? Um, I'm going to play this video by one of our high performance coaches, Mr. Murli RX, and who's going to give us a little glimpse. Yeah.
So the role of a coach is to first of all define the purpose, and once the purpose is established, then what happens? Individual roles has to be defined. So each one of them, each individuals have their own desires and roles, desires and the motivation level. So how do you bring them together to align with one common purpose? So this is where a leader or a coach plays a major role. So the leader defines, the coach defines the values and the cultures of the team, and he defines the role of each individual player. So this stage is called as forming. I call this stage as forming. And then the next stage goes in once a team is formed. Now these individuals, there are individuals when their goals are there, the goals that has been defined might not match their desired goal or their individual goal. So that is when there can be a little bit of conflict, when the team, some of the team members are not very clear with the rules or with the idea of being with part of the team. So that is when the conflict can occur. Individuals can differ from the goal set, individuals can differ from the roles set to them. So the conflict can arise in this particular stage. So this again here, the role of a leader or a coach plays a very major role, wherein the leader comes in, the coach comes in, and then he clears all the conflict, he helps them to settle the conflict, and then he redefines the goal or give more clarity, or settles the player with the ideas that needs to be executed. And then this is called a storming stage, where both in forming and storming stage, the coach plays a very major role. And then after the storming comes the norming stage, where everybody settles down, everybody is clear with their roles and goals, everybody is settled with the values that has been set, and then the team start accepting their responsibilities and then their roles. So once this clarity is got, now is the stage where the coach sets in to work more on the game plan, work more on the strategies. So here we've shifted from player centric to in the norming stage, it comes down to the game centric, where we start looking at the process centric, not the game centric, the process centric.
That was a lovely video, wasn't it?
Yes, definitely. It was very, very interesting to watch, how he's applied, the stages of team formation.
Yeah, right. So he really did explain what was given by Tuckman, how to build a team, right? And the four aspects, the four stages he talks about is, just to recap, is, a team, first it's a group of people coming together. So it's forming, right? And I love the words Tuckman's actually given, right? And then, you put a couple of people together, obviously there are going to be conflict of interest, and except in the beginning it's really nice, and then working through that stage, and that's what he calls storming, right, is where it's an essential aspect of sport and life, and especially when we're talking of teams, right? Not just teams as in a team game, but even a new team coming in any organization that actually is seen. And then once this is worked, what we see is the norming phase, where players are actually coming together, and then finally as you see them performing. So I think that's brilliant, right? I really like how Mr. Murli RX actually teased it out for us. So what comes to mind as how would what comes up, like as we heard him and as we just venturing into and looking at teams and team forming?
Yeah. So I think certain things that he spoke of was, conflicts happen because the roles are not really clear.
Yes.
Yeah. So you have to redefine certain things and set certain expectations, right? And the role of the leader becomes extremely important. And I think the communication, these are some of the things which are coming to my mind. Yeah.
Right. And it's basically a team which performs, especially exceptionally well, and a team which doesn't perform. I think one of the key ingredients becomes what is really expected.
Yeah.
If we go back to one of the examples that I'd given about, the Kabaddi group, right, where what to do, what am I supposed to do, can I take this, can I not take this, this risk. So I think it's also leaving things dicey, right? And I think that can get a little heavy as well. So they're not even going to feel safe enough to really, like you keep using the word, be themselves and go and really play the best game of your life, right? Because that's really what we want, as even as audience, and that's what an individual and a team would want, right, while performing.
Absolutely. I think it is about, generally in our psychology sessions, we have the whole team sitting together where, there is more people discuss that about their specific positions and what help they actually need from the other positions, and how they can actually contribute. So probably they also speak about the challenges of their respective positions. Like, let's say if it is a volleyball team, the setter speaks about the difficulties that they face, then liberos speak about the same thing. And I think that makes the team sensitive, towards everybody's roles.
Exactly.
So I think that is extremely important process to undergo. Otherwise a person may feel that I'm contributing more and the other person is not contributing enough. So
exactly.
These things happen. Or sometimes what happens is there was this one particular team that I was actually working with, and then this one player, he wanted to help everybody out. And the coach had a problem with that, because he's like, I just want you to stay in your role. I don't want you to go out helping every single person on this particular team.
I love that example, and what you're speaking of reminds me of Belbin's scale, right, where so this is one of the scales where it really brings out what kind of role would actually suit this individual. For example, someone could be quite withdrawn, but maybe they're really skillful in terms of researching. Okay, what's the opposition team, what's like the place, what's the setting. Someone else could be a major influencer. So like, where do you bring this person in? And who would be a good leader, right? So I think I really love what what the example you brought in, because without roles it really does get very difficult. And also expectation, like if a lot of our chunks are connected, like it's also what is really being communicated. Has the coach and the leadership team been very clear? And especially I think this would be with I want to give this example of this was one of the teams, and this player was towards the fag end of his career, right? So and he was also going through a lot of interpersonal turmoil, had a little bit of anxiety issues, and he was constantly not happy. Right, but he was a very, very influential person, very, very influential, and also on a good day, right, like he could really pep up the team. So so then when we sat with it, we were like, okay, what is this person actually, how can we channel his energy in the right manner? That becomes the key, right? And then we realized, because he was so skillful, to really look into, okay, what's the opposition, what do we do, how do we build in, what risk can be taken when. And we actually channeled his energy, and that seemed to work, reasonably well. So I think it's especially in a team game where you have, let's say, in cricket, like 11 individuals, and then you've got all your extras, and then you also have the support staff. How are we working with everyone? Right? That becomes the key. Okay. I was thinking of Chak De. It's actually, of course, they've taken the theme from like hockey in itself, and how it was a group of individuals who were scattered. You know, like if you remember, especially the beginning, right? They would take their name, like for example, Chaitanya and I go Karnataka. And like, you know, it was only, I think, one of the players who finally becomes the captain is, you know, she takes her name and says India. Right? Like, and as I'm saying India in itself, you know, Priyanka, like I'm feeling goosebumps because that's what it is, right? Like even as psychologists, we're really working for India. It's not, you know, it's beyond our state and it's beyond everything. So what do you feel like, you know, like let's tease out the movie a little, because I really feel it's got all the elements of, you know, the team, right?
Yeah, I think when I watched that movie, I still remember it was so inspiring.
Yeah.
And really brought a lot of pride
Yeah.
for our country. So it was extremely amazing.
Yeah.
And now it just brings back the same memories, like probably when I traveled with the team.
Yes, exactly. That's
So,
what I was thinking.
Yeah,
it must be so.
It was so exciting because
Such a proud
everybody is
moment.
like saying, "Oh, India, you're from India." It was fantastic to go out there, and also with the team, right? Like with the teams, it's so amazing because you have one particular name and one label that we use there.
Yes.
We are not, I mean, although we have our own uniqueness, but I think we belong there together as India.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I remember working with this young basketballer, and you know, she'd missed the first conditioning camp. And you know, and then also had issues with like fitting in because you've not been part of the first camp, and then you know, you've missed the first conditioning camp, and she came, she was in a really bad state, okay? And one thing I asked her was, I was like, what is it that you really want? Can you guess what she said? You're close to what you were
belonging.
saying. Belonging. And she was like, I want to play for India. Right? And belonging, right? So we held that, you know, like for me that became a cue with this athlete in particular. And she was also very visual, okay? So it's like, you know, so, and she didn't like running, okay? Imagine basketball and not running. So it was like basically hold the image of India. And you know, and then slowly worked to integrate her into the team because she's not been part of the first forming stage, right? So it became very crucial. So I think that's a really good example. Yeah. And next, moving to one of the most essential aspects which we see in all teams and which, you know, we'd want to dwell upon a little is the second stage, which is, you know, after people come, we say hi, hello, and then, you know, after that initial excitement kind of comes down a little, is so many people together, right? Working together. And also, how do you balance, you know, the individual's goal, like, you know, the coach was saying, with the team goal, or what I would say the vision, right? So that's where I think our culture sessions become very important. Right? Like how are we bringing the group together?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's so important. I feel that for anything to move forward, communication is the key.
Right. And I think what you're saying, right, like how do we also, you know, make way for seniors and juniors to communicate?
Absolutely, because I think that, of course, the hierarchy is essential in the teams. You know, the seniors are, they come with a lot of experience, but also the juniors are coming in. I think they really have to be guided well. And, you know, if at all they're not respected, be it the senior or the junior, vice versa, they're not really respected, then, you know, the team doesn't really become a team. There is no resilience in that particular team.
And also what I hear is, you know, like you know, a lot of times when you know, we work especially with team games, what we see is, you know, there will be, let's say, you know, one is the senior player or the captain who's talking, and then, you know, the younger ones, or especially the new players, you know, don't really speak up. And I remember one team, you know, where it was a very open captain, and you know, he said, you know, I want everyone to stand up, you know, I want you all to take up the challenge. But then, you know, how do you build that? So, you know, so one of the things we did was, you know, like when I did the culture session, and, you know, the team session was really mixing up the players in the activity. And I remember one of the youngest, not one of the youngest, I think he was practically the youngest in the team. So when, you know, each group had to come and like explain and, you know, to the rest of the team. and he's like, oh, should I also explain this?
Hmm.
And I could see the joy of the captain, and he's like, yeah, and and this was a very quiet, really quiet, introverted guy. So we'd worked with opening them up, right? So it's really about that trickle effect goes down, right? That trickle effect really goes down, right? And it was so heartening. And by the end of the session, there was a lot of what we like to use Bene Brown's, vulnerability, where people started, saying, this happened and I'm sorry, but in a very held and empathic manner.
Yeah.
And that day it felt like the team was actually started coming together. I won't say came together as such, but like they really, because you started, you kind of gauge, the energy of the team started feeling, for lack of a better word, positive or uplifted,
Yeah. No, I think as you're talking about this, I am also thinking of this session I had with this one particular team I was working with. And there again, there were stories of human connection.
Yes, yeah.
It was so beautiful, and on the field that day after the session, we were able to see that players were actually able to understand each other. They were able to appreciate that everybody has their own adversities, and we've come together for a particular cause.
Exactly.
So to play for a common vision, a common goal.
Yes.
So that was extremely amazing to watch.
Yeah. I love that example. And we saw this a lot during COVID, right? I remember, I won't take the name, one of the journalists, right, like asked me, so Indians like to dance. This was during IPL, and he was like, Indians like to dance, and what's going to happen, like with the bio bubble, and you have all your distances and all that. So and but I remember fun activities just really eases up people, right? And I think something which happened, which I think we saw with a lot of teams, was because we were together, right? You actually, like you were saying, really understand. Like players really going, and because I remember at the breakfast table, I remember once, not just players but even support staff, the doctor said, doc, so he was like, Chaitanya and one more person, your results haven't come for COVID. And I said, and I told him, every time I see you, my heart just drops. And then so it was one of our other support staff was there. He was like, oh ma'am, thank God, I thought it's only me, because every time his name doesn't come. But I think there was a lot, we went beyond ourselves in going, like there were a lot of people from Chennai, and Chennai at that point of time saw a spike in the cases, like people literally really reaching out to another, and I think bonding as a team outside your sport is so important, because maybe that look, like just that look that Priyanka is giving me, probably I need it, when, like, let's say, I get lost, right? And this is going to happen a lot in sport. So when you see that tender spot, when you see that touch, there's a connection, there's a human connection, right?
Absolutely. I think sport is, of course, beyond performance. I think human connection is what makes performance happen to a very large extent, and without that connection, you will not see performance happening for a very prolonged period of time. It may be just temporary. That is what I would like to say.
Yeah. I was smiling also because I think for me it's also other connection, not just human, but yes, sticking to sport. So let's take some examples of actually handling conflict, because it is people think, I remember, they like, when you work with certain teams, people go like, oh, how is this one with this one? Oh, I heard something about XYZ. And you kind of go, like, I mean, like we've all heard it, right? Like at various times. So I always say, even in a family, there's going to be differences.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we all stay together, right? So, handling conflict is an art in itself.
Absolutely. I think, like you said, even in family, there's so much of conflicts. So when there are people around, working for a common cause, there will be differences of opinion. There will be conflicts. And like the coach also in his video spoke about, when the roles are not really clear. And we also need to, I think, conflict resolution happens at multiple levels.
Yes, yes.
Right? We need to understand what the other person is going through. And one other thing that could be practiced is not really personalizing what the other person is saying.
Yeah.
Because like I think we have to focus on what the problem is and how can we move forward to solve that particular problem. Most of the times what happens is we get so personal.
Yeah,
How can this person
correct.
talk about me, etc., etc., and that makes conflicts extremely unresolvable somewhere.
Yeah, I think also following through with what you're saying, sometimes also what happens on the field, heat of the moment, things will come up, we will say, ability to either speak it out if there's that need, if you're the kind of person who needs that kind of clarity, but if not, letting it go, because if you don't let that go, right, then I think it eats you up.
Yeah. And I think these are some of the things which have to be discussed probably even in the sessions that we take. Like, how are you feeling? Because some people really carry it to heart. They bring it to the field next day. Or maybe they would want to avoid this person probably who is, yelled at them. Because they feel that, okay, the senior has yelled at me. So, I don't really have a say, and I have to hide myself.
As well. Yeah.
So all these things definitely happens, and probably they want to avoid this person or want to overdo and help out this person quite a bit. So that they don't pick on them anymore. So these are not going to resolve the issue.
So what you're saying is really, I mean, it also ties up to communication. So keeping your communication and your channels open and clear. So I think that's where the leadership group, which includes our, obviously the captain and the coach, becomes extremely vital. So would you say like a relational coach, as we say?
Absolutely.
Would play a bigger role or a more significant role in handling conflict?
Yes, because definitely I would agree with that, because somebody who's sensitive, somebody who's empathetic, in understanding people, I think will also help the team's performance to a very large extent.
Yeah, exactly. I remember, one of the coaches that I worked with, and he would say, listen, you're going to lose it. I'm going to lose it as a coach, when like, of course, the team doesn't perform. But also, he was like, you should have the courage to go say, okay, listen, I lost it yesterday. Or like, okay, fine, like, let's regroup, right? And I also, I tying up to, conflict, and also it is understanding, probably going a little as to what we're really working is to the vision and the goal. And also, every individual contributes. Like, let's say even, someone who's benched that day, but like, when he carries like the drink or carries water, his energy and what he probably says to the guy there, who's probably on the crease, could really be something very important. Like I've seen, like sometimes, like some, like, maybe due to the wicket and stuff, like, they'll be at the boundary, especially during COVID time, okay, because there was no audience as well, right? But the way they would keep cheering, it's like they made up an army in themselves.
Wow.
So
that's
I
very
think
nice, inspirational.
Yeah, and there what's been done is he or she has been made to feel and become an integral part of the team. I
absolutely.
think that's vital, right?
Yeah. And the way you also spoke about the ownership that a person takes and says that, what, I lost it. Going back and talking about it, because so many times we feel that, they don't mind. Maybe the players don't mind. I'm the coach, I can do whatever I want. That is there. But then I think they do mind.
Of course.
Yeah.
And I think also then he's setting that example, no? Listen, this is what happened. And I also have to bring in this, that when we were talking in terms of like how do you keep up the energy, because I think that's going to be vital with when conflicts come, that it can be handled. And it was one of these bowling coaches, so he would say, I would ask the guys who are benched to actually bowl a couple of balls, play with them, be with them, because then you've really shifted the energy, because and I thought that was really beautiful. I thought that was so you're thinking of the match, of course, but then after, of course, the team's gone in, like, as a coach, it's you're sitting back, but instead of just sitting back and watching, he was like, I also want to do this, because what, they're important.
Absolutely. I think so that is what, right? Like either you allow your ego to be very very important, or you allow and think that okay, my relationship with my team is important, so I need to resolve this conflict.
Yeah, relationship.
Yeah.
I think your team cohesion, and since it's Priyanka, I think I can also bring in that it's your field, right?
Yeah.
It's your it's like these beads, right?
Hmm.
So anyone up and down can be pulling down, but then
Yeah.
like somewhere along the way someone else can pull it up.
Yeah.
And there's this, I remember when I was doing my PhD, right? Like one of the Australian cricketers had said, sometimes it's early morning, right? And like your energy is just so low, and we're like jogging and stuff. And then you realize that, okay, listen, I'm also feeling that, but let's perk up.
Yeah.
And then he goes like, and then you make that decision to actually raise up. So sing a song, probably pick up your pace, say something, come on guys, or a trigger word, or and then he's like, you raise it.
Yeah.
So I think like it's I think when we look at conflict, we also have to hold the team bonding. Like the way a team pushes itself, takes those little steps, but which are very very vital, which can then come in handy when conflict does happen.
Yeah. And I really like the way you said, like people need to really feel secure as a team for them to go out there and express with other people, and they know that the team is not going to split because of this particular conflict.
Right.
It's like a relationship, right? If you feel secure with your partner, you know that nothing is going to happen to this partnership.
Yeah,
We will
right.
make sure that we resolve this problem and we move forward.
Yes.
So I think it's the same thing even with the team. It's that kind of support that that security that the team is still going to be there. I can still voice myself out.
Yeah, and I'm an integral part of the team, no
Yeah.
matter what happens, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what you brought up brings to mind, this example. I just recently heard, it was Virendra Sehwag was saying, so he's known as this pitcher, like he would like to hit, right? So apparently, he was, I think he'd finished, or he'd crossed his 100, and he was batting with Sachin Tendulkar. So Sachin was like, listen, I don't want you to chakka nahi marna, so no fours, no sixes. And he said, we really need to stay there. And he's like, if you chakka mara, so then I'm going to like really hit you. And then he says, he waited, and then I think that's where he crossed. What was very important, and that lesson there was, Sachin was teaching him, listen, you need to stay here. You
be
crossed your
patient.
century, but don't go berserk because the team needs you. And he said, that's an important lesson I learned. And I thought that was a great example, right? Like, great
Absolutely.
example. Not just, one definitely team, also to curb him a little at the right point of time. So how do they build that partnership? It's also happened a lot outside the crease.
Absolutely.
Right?
You need to understand, the person you're playing with. You need to also understand, what are they actually bringing to the game. You need to understand every person has a potential.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Right. And I think one of my favorite examples, and something that I really liked was, I remember reading this article by Ganguly. He said, I would take out this fear of failure from my players, right? And I thought that was so brilliant, especially for someone who's coming in, or who's going through a lean patch, saying you've got the captain's backing. I think, and then he goes on to give a lot of examples. One was even of Anil Kumble, at one patch, and how they come up, because you've actually again taken off one and gone like, listen, I am backing you, you've got me, and you're integral. And I think that's that's the way a transformational leader really brings up the team, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like the fact that it's like giving them security to go out there, take risk, make their mistakes.
Yes,
get to
exactly.
know that, yeah, like my boss used to do that to me while I was working. So I remember when I did not know how to go about doing certain administrative part, he used to always, and I used to go to him and say that, what, I've made such a huge mistake. He would always be so supportive and say that, no problem, I will talk to the concerned
Right, yeah.
people, and then, there will be nothing.
Right.
So it made me feel that, okay, I have to be more responsible
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
since he trusts me.
Yeah.
And, and I had to learn from that. And also the fact that I could take risks because he's still there.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that thin line between, you know, being responsible. At the same time, I know that I can't take him for granted.
Yeah.
I need to respect the fact that, you know, he trusts me.
Yeah,
So-
trust, and also that gave you an impetus to grow as well.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Rather than shrink, where like if he had like really shaken you up, like let's say that
Yeah,
first time,
yeah.
you know, that would have gotten very difficult.
Yeah.
I think this is great. This is brilliant. So we've really tried to touch on, you know, the stages, and especially the second stage, because then what you see after storming is people, then the teams come together. Not that there's never going to be a conflict, there will be, but you know, they've at least the roles have gotten established. It's all gotten clear, and then there's a functioning in a particular way, and then they go on from, you know, norming, then to the final performing, right? So thank you, Priyanka. This was
Thank you, ma'am.
insightful, and we hope you enjoyed it too.